There's a secret staircase that appears at the end of a hallway to nowhere. A windowless room completely lined with asbestos to muffle sound, several secret chambers, and a vault which locks from the outside. He designs a system of pipes leading from Holmes's private apartment to each guest room, where he can control the flow of gas to asphyxiate victims. And the most eerie detail by far, a greased chute, 3 foot by 3 foot, just large enough for a body, leading straight to the basement, where he installed a cremation kiln and lime pits used to eliminate the stench of rotting flesh. They call it his murder castle.
To say it was of a nefarious design is an understatement. So he builds this castle with the idea of, I'm going to lure women and I'm going to seduce some of them and I'm going to torture and kill others.
H.H. Holmes is well on his way toward realizing his murderous fantasies in a Chicago mansion.
In the late 19th century, Chicago stood as a beacon of hope and progress. The city pulsed with life, its streets alive with the hum of industry, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, and the chatter of dreamers flocking to this burgeoning metropolis. It was a place where fortunes were made overnight, where innovation seemed limitless, and where people from all walks of life arrived in search of opportunity. Towering steel structures reached toward the heavens, symbols of mankind's relentless ambition. Yet beneath this glittering facade of prosperity lay shadows, deep, impenetrable corners where darkness festered unseen by the masses. In these hidden spaces, secrets simmered just out of sight, waiting for their moment to emerge. Among those drawn to Chicago's promise was Julia Connor, a young woman whose story would become one of heartbreak and tragedy. She had come to the Windy City like so many others, carrying dreams of love, stability, and a brighter future. With her gentle smile and hopeful eyes, she embodied the spirit of countless souls who believed they could carve out a better existence within the city's bustling neighborhoods. But Julia never found the happiness she sought. Instead, her name became another whisper lost among the thousands that echoed through Chicago's alleys, a name linked to disappearance, mystery, and unspeakable horror. Her dreams turned to dust, her voice silenced forever, leaving behind only questions that haunt us still. And then there is the question you cannot ignore. What if your neighbor wasn't simply eccentric or peculiar, but harbored something far more chilling beneath their carefully constructed exterior? Imagine living next door to someone whose charm masked an unthinkable truth. This was the reality for those who crossed paths with Herman Webster Mudgett, better known by his alias H.H. Holmes. To the world he appeared magnetic, charismatic, a man who exuded confidence and intelligence, but behind closed doors he orchestrated horrors beyond comprehension. His infamous murder castle loomed over the south side of Chicago, a labyrinthine structure designed not for shelter, but for death. Its walls concealed rooms built for torment, gas chambers disguised as vaults, and secret passages leading to crematoriums. Hundreds may have entered its gates, lured by false promises, only to vanish without a trace. How does a man transform from a seemingly ordinary individual into a figure capable of such calculated brutality? How does someone manipulate trust, exploit vulnerability, and construct an empire rooted in fear and death? These are the questions that linger long after the details fade. For while Holmes walked among them, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, building connections, he carried within him a capacity for cruelty that defied understanding. And it is here at the intersection of ambition and depravity that we begin to unravel the chilling tale of how one man's dark desires reshaped the fabric of true crime history. Chicago in the late 1800s was a city teetering between two worlds, one of dazzling progress and another of hidden dangers. The air buzzed with excitement as preparations for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition reached their peak. This grand event promised to showcase humanity's achievements, drawing millions from across the globe to marvel at its wonders. Factories churned out steel and machinery, railroads crisscrossed the landscape, and skyscrapers pierced the sky like monuments to ambition. Yet, amidst this whirlwind of innovation, neighborhoods like Inglewood stood as quiet pockets where life moved at a slower pace. Or so it appeared. Inglewood, once a sleepy suburb, had transformed into a bustling community thanks to Chicago's rapid expansion. Its tree-lined streets and modest homes gave it an air of respectability, making it the perfect place for someone like H. Holmes to blend in seamlessly. To his neighbors, he was a successful businessman, a man who exuded confidence and charm. He dressed impeccably, spoke eloquently, and carried himself with an aura of sophistication that commanded trust. Few could have guessed that beneath this polished exterior lay a mind capable of unspeakable acts. It was here, on South Wallace Avenue, that Holmes began constructing what would later be known as the Murder Castle in 1888, a building cloaked in normalcy but designed for devastation. What started as a simple drugstore purchase quickly evolved into something far more sinister, though no one realized it at the time. The timeline of Holmes's crimes is as chilling as it is calculated. By 1888, construction on the castle was underway, its design growing increasingly complex with each passing month. It wasn't long before the first whispers of tragedy began to surface. Holmes committed his first known murders shortly after the castle's completion, using the chaos of the upcoming World's Fair to mask his activities. His methods were methodical, exploiting weaknesses in society itself, greed, desperation, and blind faith in appearances. Law enforcement, still grappling with corruption and inefficiency, proved woefully unequipped to handle the horrors unfolding under their noses. Holmes thrived in this environment, preying on those who trusted him most while leaving behind only fragments of evidence too easily dismissed. Among the countless lives shattered by Holmes's actions, Julia Connor and her young daughter Pearl stand out as tragic figures emblematic of his cruelty. Julia was a mother driven by hope, seeking stability for herself and her child in a world that often felt uncertain. She dreamed of providing Pearl with opportunities she had never known, a safe home, an education, perhaps even a chance at happiness. But when Julia crossed paths with Holmes, those dreams turned to ash. Drawn in by his promises of employment and security, she unwittingly stepped into a nightmare from which there would be no escape. Pearl, just a child, became another casualty of Holmes's depravity, her innocence stolen alongside her life. Their stories are haunting reminders of how vulnerability can be weaponized against those who least expect it. Benjamin Petetzel, another key figure in Holmes's web, represents yet another facet of his manipulative genius. A struggling carpenter with mounting debts, Petetzel fell victim to Holmes's charisma and cunning. Initially hired to assist in the construction of the Murder Castle, Petetzel soon found himself entangled in Holmes's schemes, including elaborate insurance fraud plots. Though he believed he was working toward financial salvation, Petetzel instead became a pawn in Holmes's deadly game. His eventual fate, and the fates of his family members, would send shockwaves through the investigation years later, revealing the depths of Holmes's ruthlessness. Holmes himself remains an enigma wrapped in layers of deception. Born Herman Webster Mudgett in New Hampshire, he grew up in a household marked by strict discipline and high expectations. As a boy, he exhibited a morbid fascination with death, reportedly dissecting animals and conducting crude experiments. Later, during his medical training, he stole cadavers to stage accidents and collect insurance payouts, a precursor to the larger-scale frauds he would later orchestrate. After reinventing himself as H. Holmes, he shed his past entirely, crafting a persona tailored to exploit the gullibility of others. His brilliance lay not only in his ability to deceive, but also in his knack for evading suspicion, even as bodies piled up around him. Detective Frank Geyer enters this tale as a beacon of determination amidst the darkness. Tasked with unraveling the mysteries surrounding Holmes's crimes, Geyer embarked on a relentless pursuit of truth. Traveling across multiple states, interviewing witnesses, and piecing together fragments of evidence, he slowly uncovered the extent of Holmes's atrocities. Where others saw dead ends, Geyer saw connections. Where others faltered, he pressed forward. His work ultimately brought Holmes to justice, ensuring that the full weight of the law came crashing down upon the man once thought untouchable. To understand Holmes' crimes fully, one must delve into the lives of those ensnared by his web. Julia Connor, for instance, embodied resilience and hope. A widow raising her daughter alone, she sought refuge in the promise of steady work offered by Holmes. Her decision to accept a position within his operations seemed practical at first, a way to provide for Pearl while securing her own future. Little did she know that this choice would lead her directly into the heart of Holmes' lair. Pearl, bright-eyed and full of potential, accompanied her mother, unaware of the danger lurking ahead. Together they represent the countless individuals who placed their trust in Holmes, only to lose everything. Holmes's troubled past offers further insight into his twisted psyche. From his early days as Herman Webster Mudgett, he displayed traits that hinted at darker inclinations. Medical school introduced him to the intricacies of human anatomy, fueling both his curiosity and his capacity for cruelty. Insurance fraud became his gateway to crime, teaching him how to manipulate systems and people alike. Each success emboldened him, pushing him closer to the brink of madness. By the time he settled in Chicago, he had honed his skills to perfection, becoming a master of deception. His relationships with women reveal yet another dimension of his character. Myrta Belknap and Georgiana Yoke, two of his wives, entered into marriages built on lies. Neither woman knew the full extent of Holmes's double life, nor did they suspect the existence of other partners. These unions served as tools for control, allowing Holmes to maintain facades of normalcy while pursuing his darker ambitions. Benjamin Pitezel, too, fell prey to Holmes's manipulations, believing himself indispensable until it was too late. Red flags abounded: his frequent disappearances, contradictory stories, and questionable finances. But those closest to him chose to overlook them, blinded by loyalty or desperation. As the World's Fair approached, Holmes seized upon the chaos it generated. Thousands poured into Chicago, eager to witness history unfold. Many arrived unprepared, vulnerable to exploitation. Holmes capitalized on this influx, luring victims into his castle under the guise of employment or lodging. The building itself was a masterpiece of horror, its design deliberately crafted to instill fear and confusion. Soundproof rooms muffled cries for help, gas chambers allowed for silent executions, and secret passageways enabled Holmes to move undetected. Every detail served a purpose, every corner concealed a trap. Within these walls, lives were extinguished, identities erased, and secrets buried deep. What emerges from this tapestry of deceit and destruction is a portrait of evil cloaked in charm, ambition twisted into perversion. Holmes' story serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the lengths to which some will go to satisfy their darkest desires. And though Detective Frank Geyer eventually brought him to justice, the scars left by his reign of terror remain etched into history, a testament to the enduring power of fear. The decision to escalate from fraud to murder came not as a sudden impulse but as a calculated move, born of necessity and opportunity. For Holmes, the stakes had grown too high, loose ends were piling up, and whispers of suspicion threatened to unravel the elaborate web he had woven. Benjamin Pitezel became the first domino to fall in this deadly cascade. Once a trusted accomplice, Pitezel had unknowingly signed his own death warrant by becoming privy to Holmes's most damning secrets. To Holmes, eliminating him was not merely an act of cruelty, it was a matter of survival. The breaking point arrived when Holmes realized that Pitezel could no longer be controlled, that his knowledge posed a direct threat to the empire Holmes had built on deception. And so, with chilling precision, Holmes orchestrated what appeared to be an accidental fire at a property in Philadelphia, using it as cover for Pitezel's demise. What followed was a grotesque charade. Holmes collected insurance payouts under false pretenses, ensuring that even in death, Pitezel served his purpose. The layout of the murder castle played a pivotal role in facilitating Holmes's killing spree, transforming what seemed like an ordinary building into a labyrinth of terror. Visitors entered through unassuming doors, unaware that they were stepping into a trap meticulously designed for horror. The ground floor housed legitimate businesses, shops, offices, and apartments that masked the atrocities unfolding above. Upstairs, however, the true nature of the structure revealed itself. Soundproof rooms lined the upper levels, their walls thick enough to muffle screams. Gas jets installed in some chambers allowed Holmes to suffocate his victims without leaving visible marks, while others featured sloped floors and chutes leading to hidden crematoriums below. Secret passageways crisscrossed the building, enabling Holmes to move unseen between rooms, disposing of bodies or retrieving tools for dissection. Every detail was deliberate, every corner steeped in malice. Chilling anecdotes abound about the horrors perpetrated within those walls. Some victims reportedly endured prolonged torture before meeting their end, subjected to experiments that blurred the line between science and sadism. Others were dissected posthumously, their remains sold to medical schools, a grim trade that added insult to injury. One particularly harrowing account tells of a young woman lured to the castle under the pretense of employment, only to vanish shortly thereafter. Her fate remains unknown, her name lost to history along with countless others who crossed Holmes's path. These stories paint a picture of systematic brutality, where human life was reduced to nothing more than a commodity to be exploited and discarded. In the immediate aftermath of each crime, Holmes demonstrated a level of composure that bordered on inhuman. His ability to fabricate plausible explanations for disappearances left investigators baffled time and again. When questions arose about Benjamin Pitezel's whereabouts, Holmes presented forged documents suggesting Pitezel had fled to avoid debt collectors. He staged accidents, faked suicides, and manipulated evidence with such finesse that even those closest to the victims doubted their instincts. Yet, despite his efforts to erase all traces, cracks began to form in his facade. Pitezel's widow, Carrie, grew increasingly uneasy as weeks turned into months without word from her husband. The anguish she felt was compounded by the realization that something far darker than abandonment might have occurred. Doubts gave way to dread as she pieced together fragments of information pointing toward Holmes's involvement. Detective Frank Geyer stepped into the fray during the investigation into the disappearance of Pitezel's children, a case that would ultimately expose Holmes's crimes to the world. Tasked with tracking down Howard, Nellie, and Alice Pitezel, Geyer embarked on a journey that took him across multiple states, following a trail of deceit and despair. Archival sketches depict key moments in his pursuit, including the discovery of Howard's charred remains in a rented property in Indianapolis. The sight of the boy's body partially consumed by flames sent shockwaves through the community and hardened Geyer's resolve to uncover the truth. Further searches led to the recovery of Nellie and Alice's bodies in Toronto, buried beneath layers of lime in a desperate attempt to conceal their identities. Each revelation brought Geyer closer to understanding the full scope of Holmes's depravity. Law enforcement's reliance on forensic evidence proved instrumental in linking Holmes to the murders. Letters exchanged between Holmes and his accomplices contained incriminating details, revealing plans for insurance fraud and hints of foul play. Autopsy reports confirmed suspicions raised by the condition of the recovered bodies, showing clear signs of violence inconsistent with Holmes's fabricated narratives. Medical examiners noted burns, fractures, and other injuries that pointed to deliberate harm rather than accidents. Together, these pieces formed a mosaic of guilt that left little room for doubt. Still, Holmes remained elusive, his charm and cunning allowing him to evade capture for far longer than anyone anticipated. Interrogation scenes recreated from historical accounts highlight the psychological battle waged between Holmes and his interrogators. Initially, he denied any wrongdoing, deflecting blame onto others and spinning tales designed to confuse investigators. But Detective Geyer, armed with mounting evidence and unwavering determination, employed tactics aimed at dismantling Holmes's defenses. By confronting him with inconsistencies in his story and presenting irrefutable proof of his involvement, Geyer gradually chipped away at Holmes's carefully constructed persona. Over time, cracks began to show. Holmes's confident demeanor faltered, replaced by flashes of unease and desperation. In a moment of weakness, he offered a partial confession, admitting to certain crimes while downplaying their severity. Though incomplete, this admission marked a turning point in the investigation, providing authorities with the leverage needed to bring him to justice. What emerges from this chapter is a portrait of evil operating with chilling efficiency, its reach extending far beyond the confines of the murder castle. Holmes's actions shattered lives, leaving behind a legacy of pain and unanswered questions. Through the tireless efforts of men like Detective Frank Geyer, light was finally cast upon the darkness Holmes sought to perpetuate. Yet, even as justice was served, the scars inflicted by his crimes lingered, serving as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the depths of human depravity. The courtroom drama that unfolded during H. Holmes's trial was nothing short of a spectacle, drawing crowds eager to witness the unraveling of one of history's most infamous criminals. The prosecution painted a damning portrait of premeditation and calculated cruelty, presenting an avalanche of evidence that left little room for doubt. Letters exchanged between Holmes and his accomplices revealed intricate plans for insurance fraud, while autopsy reports confirmed the violent nature of the deaths tied to him. Testimonies from survivors added another layer of horror, recounting how they narrowly escaped the clutches of a man whose charm masked unimaginable brutality. Medical experts described the inner workings of the murder castle in chilling detail. Soundproof rooms, gas chambers, hidden passageways, all meticulously designed to facilitate death on an industrial scale. Each piece of evidence served as a brick in the wall of guilt closing in around Holmes. In stark contrast, the defense mounted a desperate bid for leniency by claiming insanity. Attorneys argued that Holmes suffered from deep-seated psychological disturbances rooted in alleged childhood trauma, suggesting that his actions were beyond his control. They pointed to erratic behavior documented throughout his life, bizarre experiments involving cadavers during medical school, compulsive lying even when it served no apparent purpose, and an obsession with manipulation that bordered on pathological. Yet these claims fell flat in the face of overwhelming proof of his deliberate planning. Holmes had not acted out of madness but out of cold calculation, exploiting every weakness he encountered with surgical precision. The defense's plea seemed more like a last-ditch effort to save their client than a genuine explanation for his crimes. Key revelations emerged during the trial that sent shockwaves through the gallery and solidified Holmes's image as a monster among men. Survivors took the stand, trembling voices recounting how they had been lured into the murder castle under false pretenses, only to escape narrowly after witnessing unspeakable horrors. One woman described being locked in a soundproof room where she could hear muffled cries from adjacent chambers, a haunting reminder of what awaited those who crossed Holmes's path. Another recounted her terror upon discovering secret chutes leading to basement crematoriums, realizing too late the fate intended for her. Perhaps most unnerving was Holmes himself, whose demeanor throughout the proceedings defied expectation. He sat calmly, almost detached, exuding the same charm that had once disarmed so many victims. At times, he appeared almost bored, as if the gravity of the charges against him failed to register. This eerie composure only reinforced perceptions of him as a man devoid of remorse or humanity. When the jury delivered its verdict, there was no ambiguity. Guilty on all counts. The decision came swiftly, reflecting the unanimity of belief in Holmes's culpability. As the foreman read the words aloud, a collective exhale swept through the courtroom, a mixture of relief and vindication. For months, families of the victims had waited anxiously for justice, clinging to hope despite the odds stacked against them. Now, at last, it had arrived, but the judge reserved some of his harshest words for the sentencing phase, delivering a scathing condemnation that echoed far beyond the confines of the courtroom. "You are not simply a criminal," he declared, addressing Holmes directly. "You are a blight upon society, a predator who preyed upon the vulnerable and exploited trust for personal gain. Your actions have left scars that may never heal." With those final remarks, Holmes was sentenced to death, ensuring that his reign of terror would come to an end. The fallout from the trial reverberated deeply within Holmes's surviving family members, each grappling with the revelation of his true nature in their own way. Myrta Belknap and Georgiana Yoke, two of his wives, found themselves caught in a storm of public scrutiny and private anguish. Both women had believed they were living ordinary lives alongside a man they thought they knew, only to discover the depths of his deception. Their grief was compounded by shame as neighbors whispered behind closed doors about the notorious figure they had unwittingly called husband. Stepchildren inherited confusion and heartache, struggling to reconcile memories of kindness with the monstrous reality unveiled during the trial. For these families, the aftermath of Holmes's crimes meant navigating a world forever altered by betrayal and loss. Public outrage over the sheer scale of Holmes's atrocities reached fever pitch in the wake of the trial. Newspapers seized upon the story, splashing headlines across front pages that branded him the devil incarnate and America's first serial killer. Readers devoured accounts of his crimes with morbid fascination, fueling a media frenzy that mirrored modern-day obsessions with true crime. Editorials decried the systemic failures that allowed such horrors to occur. Unchecked, weak background checks, lax oversight of suspicious businesses, and a lack of regulation in fields like medicine and real estate. These critiques highlighted vulnerabilities in society's fabric, urging reforms to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Decades later, this legacy of fascination endures, connecting Holmes's case to contemporary interest in serial killers and the darker corners of human behavior. Beyond individual reactions, the broader social impact of Holmes' crimes cannot be overstated. His actions exposed gaping holes in systems meant to protect citizens, revealing how easily predators could exploit loopholes for personal gain. Weak regulations governing medical training enabled Holmes to acquire knowledge he later used for nefarious purposes, while inadequate vetting processes allowed him to assume new identities without consequence. Businesses operating under dubious circumstances went largely unmonitored, providing fertile ground for schemes targeting the desperate and unsuspecting. These failures underscored the importance of vigilance, not just in law enforcement, but also in recognizing signs of predatory behavior before it escalated into tragedy. Protecting vulnerable populations required more than reactive measures. It demanded proactive efforts to close gaps and hold wrongdoers accountable. As society grappled with the implications of Holmes's crimes, lessons emerged that remain relevant today. His ability to deceive stemmed not only from personal charisma, but also from societal complacency, a willingness to overlook warning signs in favor of convenience or comfort. By learning from these mistakes, communities can better safeguard themselves against those who seek to exploit trust for sinister ends. Holmes's story serves as both cautionary tale and call to action, reminding us that vigilance is the price we pay for safety, and that evil often hides behind facades of normalcy, waiting for opportunities to strike. The lessons drawn from the harrowing tale of H. Holmes are as timeless as they are urgent. His crimes serve as a stark reminder that evil often wears a mask of normalcy, hiding in plain sight until it strikes. In everyday life, con artists and predators operate much like Holmes did, preying on trust, exploiting vulnerabilities, and manipulating circumstances to their advantage. Vigilance is not merely an option, but a necessity. Recognizing red flags, questioning inconsistencies, and refusing to turn a blind eye can mean the difference between safety and catastrophe. This vigilance extends beyond individual awareness. It requires collective effort. Communities must come together to support one another, fostering environments where people feel empowered to speak up without fear of judgment or retaliation. Mental health resources play a critical role in this equation, offering tools to navigate struggles that might otherwise leave individuals susceptible to exploitation. By prioritizing these measures, we honor the memory of those who fell victim to deception and cruelty. Among the countless lives shattered by Holmes's actions, Julia Connor and her young daughter Pearl stand out as poignant symbols of resilience tragically cut short. Julia was more than just a name on a list of victims. She was a mother striving for stability, a woman determined to provide her child with a brighter future. Her dreams were simple yet profound: a safe home, opportunities for growth, and moments of joy stolen away far too soon. Pearl, with her boundless potential and innocent spirit, represents the countless children whose lives were extinguished before they could truly begin. Their stories deserve remembrance, not solely for the tragedy of their ends, but for the humanity they embodied in life. By honoring them, and all others who perished at Holmes's hands, we affirm that their voices will not be silenced by history. They remind us of what was lost, and compel us to ensure no one else suffers a similar fate. Preventative measures remain essential in safeguarding against the kind of unchecked ambition and deception that defined Holmes's reign of terror. Domestic violence hotlines offer lifelines to those trapped in abusive situations, providing guidance, shelter, and hope when it seems darkest. Fraud prevention agencies work tirelessly to educate the public about common schemes and how to protect oneself from financial exploitation. Mental health organizations play a vital role in addressing the emotional toll such crimes take on survivors and communities alike. These resources exist because society has learned, from cases like Holmes's, that prevention is infinitely preferable to reaction. To aid those seeking help, contact information for these services should always be readily accessible. National helplines, local shelters, counseling centers, and advocacy groups standing ready to assist anyone in need. As this chapter draws to a close, let us reflect on the weight of responsibility carried by every person fortunate enough to hear these stories. Evil thrives when good people stay silent. It festers in the shadows cast by indifference, growing stronger with each moment we choose complacency over action. But silence is not inevitable. Not if we commit ourselves to staying informed, remaining vigilant, and speaking out against injustice wherever it arises. The legacy of Julia Connor, Pearl Connor, Benjamin Petetzel, and countless others demands nothing less. Let their suffering inspire change, fueling a movement toward greater awareness and accountability. In the final moments of reflection, consider the power of shared knowledge. Stories like this one hold immense potential to educate, to warn, to galvanize. Encourage others to watch, listen, and learn from the past so that its mistakes are not repeated. Share this video widely, spreading awareness about the dangers posed by unchecked ambition and calculated deception. Together, we can create a world where predators find fewer opportunities to thrive and where victims' voices rise above the din of history. For in honoring their memories, we forge a path toward justice, one built on courage, compassion, and unwavering resolve.